Come on, then. Come on. Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. This is a white climbing rose, which is suitable here for the writing garden because everything in here is either white or green. I'm pretty sure it's climbing iceberg. I'm not certain because I've lost the label and it was a few years ago I planted it, but for the moment, whatever its name is, it needs tying up. Now, of course, climbing iceberg is a banker. It's guaranteed to flower for months on end. This can be flowering at Christmas sometimes. And it's worth pointing out that when you're tying any vegetative growth up at this time of year, particularly this time of year, use soft twine. Never use anything with wire in it or even a hard-edged plastic because the new growth is soft, it will move slightly, and if you have anything other than very soft twine, it can cut into it and damage it. Right, I'm going to try and gather all that in there and pull it back because otherwise it can flop a lot. And whilst a bit of floppage is good, too much is not. Now, you can't stay here because I've got to plant stuff, all right? Unless you want to lie down here. Go on, get that one. Good boy. Okay, we're not planting Neds. We're planting summer bulbs. We do tend to think of bulbs belonging to spring, and of course they do, in huge variety and glory from the first snowdrop to the last Carmassia, which here at Longmeadow can take us into June. But there are another group of bulbs, or bulb-related plants, that perform beautifully from mid to late summer into autumn. And of course they're familiar. There are gladioli, dahlias, crocosmia, lilies, and now is the time to plant them if you haven't done so already. Some do really well in pots and none better than lilies. So I want to plant some lilies today in pots. And the compost is really important because lilies need good drainage, but they also need another element because they are essentially woodland plants. And what they like is a sort of loose soil. It's not just sharp drainage like tulips, but a loose, almost fluffy soil. And the best way to create that is by using leaf mold if you've got it. This is a very gritty potting mix, and that's part peat-free, bought-in potting compost, partly sieve garden compost, and you can see the grit in it. There's quite a lot of it. Now that would do, that would be fine. But if you've got leaf mold, then add that. And I'm going to add all that to it, like that. Mix it up, like that. In the bottom of the pot, you will need crocks. So we just block that up. Okay. I'm going to half fill it. Okay, that's good. Now, the bulbs themselves. This is a variety called Claude Fried, which I've got in the Paradise Garden. And it's tall, it's sort of Turk's Cap variety with wonderful sort of raspberry burgundy colours. Lilies are different from most bulbs because the scales have no outer layer, so that they're scaly like an armadillo. So I'm going to pop that in. I'm going to put 4 in this pot, which is plenty. 3 would be fine, but I think I can get away with 4. There we go. And then use my mix to go over the top of that. just put the last little bit in. There we go. There is room to water, and this will settle a little bit. Now, I will put this out of the way, somewhere outside, doesn't need to be protected at all, and then put in position in June, and we can really enjoy it once we hit mid and late summer. Now, of course, it's important to label it. That is destined for the Paradise Garden, but not for a bit. Now, Jamie has been to visit Beth Chatto's garden near Colchester. If you haven't been, I recommend anyone to go. It's one of our great gardens. But actually, he went for a very specific purpose, which is to celebrate a plant which, by and large, he feels is underappreciated.
What else gives you colour like this? That incredible acid green. It simply glows. And yet the funny thing is, this plant is so often completely overlooked. There are over 1,500 species of euphorbia, making them one of the largest and most varied flowering plants in the world, ranging from small ground-covering perennials to large drought-tolerant shrubs, and even succulents that could easily be mistaken for cacti. This is Euphorbia wolfenii. It's one of the most architectural euphorbias, and on a day like today, where it's backlit, it is literally a beacon. It is glowing. It's a really drought-tolerant plant. It needs next to no watering, even in the driest of summers. So it adores this gravel garden setting. And a little bit of plant geekery, what looks like these columns and towers of architectural flowers are actually bracts. They're not flowers at all. The flowers are hidden inside the bracts, and they're teeny tiny. But the plant itself is phenomenal and one of my absolute favourites, a must-have for any drought-tolerant garden. This is a beast of a euphorbia. This is Euphorbia cross Pasteurii. That means it's taking the very best bits of two different euphorbias, Euphorbia mellifera and Euphorbia stygiana. And in the next few weeks, these flowers will start to emerge en masse. Now, they're beautiful to look at, but quite unusually for euphorbia, they have an additional quality. They smell incredible. They smell of honey, which also gives it its common name of honey spurge. I love to use this one to create drama, especially towards the back of a border, and it'll hold the rest of the planting in place. Just spotted in this shady little nook something that's not quite out yet. It's Euphorbia griffii Fireglow, and it will do exactly what you think it will do with a name like Fireglow. It's gonna illuminate this dark corner with the most vibrant orangey red flowers. It thrives in moist, well-drained soil where fertile conditions bring out those rich tones. I think even just the new foliage of the epimediums against the stems of the Euphorbia is a beautiful thing. And I so wish I could come back in about a week's time and see this just erupt into this fiery glow, because you just know it's going to be really special. From full sun to shade, dry soil to damp, they're far more adaptable than you might think. And they're surprisingly easy to propagate, which means you can multiply their impact across your garden. Emily Ellard is the resident propagation expert here. So one of the plants I'm obsessed with in the gardens today especially is the Euphorbia wolfenii. It's just glowing. When's
Yeah.
the best time to collect the seeds?
So it's probably going to be about May, June time, because at the moment you've got the lush mop heads,
Yep.
and soon they will start to curate the seed. And then just before it's starting to dry out a bit, we collect ththose mop heads.
You hang them upside down or anything?
No, put them in a box, a little bit of newspaper on top because they will pig everywhere like popcorn.
Oh my goodness.
And then all your seed will be at the bottom of the box. You can collect that all up and you can store some or you can sow some fresh.
It always amazes me that in each one of these seeds is the genetic information to grow that
Yes.
plant.
Oh, it's magic.
It is real life magic.
So we've got the 6 mil gravel, and then we're just going to sprinkle that on top. This is like the big duvet that sits on top of the seed, so it's like going in a cold frame, basically. Yeah.
How long would you normally expect them to take to start to germinate?
Yeah, so I actually got some that were sown January time.
I hope it's okay. I'm just going to grab one because I think these are amazing. From those teeny tiny little seeds, we're going to get one of those beautiful euphorbia wolfenii.
Yeah.
Whether they're lighting up gravel gardens or thriving in dappled woodland, these are plants which are great for wildlife. Rob Byford is responsible for the biological control in the gardens, working closely with nature to keep things in balance.
It's such a broad genus, there's so many species to it. They allow us to extend this flowering period from February almost to the first frost. So the chance for the insects to get food, and we need that now more than ever.
Powerhouse of the garden, really.
They really are, and a lot of it comes down to this here, which is their flower structure. So it's a special inflorescence, a ceophyum, and we can see in here the nectar glands. Now they secrete the nectar, and we've got the anthers here for the pollen. So for nectar feeders and for pollen feeders, the euphorbia has it all. Some of us, we do get aphids in our garden, but these will attract lacewings and parasitic wasps, which are great defenders, almost like our own little air force, against those less beneficial insects. It's self-regulating, and just by adding it to your garden, you're adding in defence to your garden as well against these less favourable critters.
It's such a beautiful plant, so uplifting and smile-inducing, but it's also giving benefit to our insects.
It is. They are like little beacons, really, flashing amongst it all.
To humans and insects
To
alike.
humans and insects alike, absolutely.
The more you look, the more you realise what a truly special plant euphorbias are. They're tough, they're resilient, they're beautiful, and they're full of life. So I think it's about time we stop treating them as background plants and hiding them in amongst our borders, and instead celebrate them and put them centre stage.
This is the Euphorbia caraceus wolfenii. It loves the dry garden. It loves the poor soil and the good drainage, and will seed itself in cracks in paving and up against the corner of a wall and paving. But it really won't do anything else in the rest of the garden, which is not suitable for it at all. I've tried growing it in the dual garden, and it just flops and is very sad and doesn't last. However, here in the dry garden, not only does it look good in itself, but it's a really good foil for the tulips and the sweet rocket. And also, you know, as a plant, it's one of the most statuesque architectural plants you could have. But I've got here some euphorbias that thrive in shade. This is the woodland garden, which is the latest change, and it's work in progress. for the moment, this year, I'm concentrating on the area that we cleared last autumn and have started to plant this spring. And it's coming through. Things are coming along. And the euphorbias I've got here, which goes by the tongue-twisting name of Euphorbia amygdaloides verrobii, is perfectly suited to this kind of woodland environment because it thrives, it positively thrives in dry shade, and there are very few plants that do that. Now, the shade comes particularly from these cherries. This is a wild cherry, a gin, lovely blossom at the moment, but the roots suck up all the moisture and the leaves cut out most of the light. So this whole area here is going to be dry shade. You can see that it has these wonderful bracts, which are like a collar, almost like a satellite dish, reflecting light with tiny flowers inside. And in shade, deep shade, they'll grow taller, so that they're more visible. They'll rise up above the foliage and give a really good display for weeks on end. And then even when they die back, the foliage will spread. It spreads quite easily, makes a really good ground cover plant, as well as having this glorious display in spring and early summer. Now, I'm going to start placing these and putting them in groups. They're not plants to place singly. Sort of like here, go down there, and then over here. I put these in a group of 3 because I want them actually to grow together and spread and form ground cover. Now, it's worth saying at this point, when you're handling euphorbias of any kind, do be careful, because if they break or crush in any way, they exude a very milky, thick sap, and that can easily cause burns. I hate gardening in gloves and never do it unless it's very thorny. But if you are happy to wear gloves, then I definitely would wear them for euphorbias. And if, like me, you don't wear gloves and you get a little bit on your hands, stop and go and wash it off. Now, Rosemary Alexander started the English Garden School, and a whole generation of garden designers learnt their craft there. And we had the opportunity to visit Rosemary's private garden at home.
One of the first things I do when I'm redesigning a garden, I try to make a garden that the owners will actually enjoy, and you know, you can actually maintain it. It's got to be something that works for you, whether it's a large or small garden. And when I came to this garden, I wanted somewhere where I could grow all the plants I loved. This is my garden at Sandhill Farmhouse in West Sussex, where I've been for the last 20 years or more. The whole garden is about half an acre on the front and half an acre at the back. So this is the main path in the whole garden, and it leads from the entrance right down to the far end. And from here you can see the house to the left and the terrace, and then the woodland garden down to the right. I put the box balls to give this path structure and form, so the repetition works well. The box balls pull you through, and you can walk past those until you get to the blue seat at the end. Instead of having the seat facing directly down to the entrance gate, I decided to put it at an angle so that I can sit and enjoy all the woodland plants in the lower level woodland garden. I trained as a landscape architect, and then I began to notice all sorts of things. I decided I really wanted to become a garden designer. I started changing gardens and changed my own garden quite a bit. I realized that unless you went to Wisley or Kew, you couldn't really learn about plants. So I thought I would set up my own school and teach people about plants. I set up the school in 1983. I just wanted to teach how to redesign a space. We're now in the woodland garden. My overall aim was to have several different areas which would have different types of plants. The contrast between dark green leaves and light green leaves and shiny leaves and matte leaves, and also the stems of the plants, because if you look here, there's quite a lot of stem, and then big groupings of things to make it look more natural. I try to use plants to separate the gravel from the soil, because I don't like using timber or metal edges. And so I use this Ophiopogon here, and then in other areas I use London Pride, Saxifraga umbrosa. When people walk into the garden, I want them to feel, oh my goodness, this is going to be a wonderful garden. I think focal points and vistas are very important. Always thinking about the long-term view. After I'd built the summer house, I thought I wanted it to look out at something. So first of all, it looked straight out at the Crataegus laciniata at the very far end there, which is a lovely deciduous tree. And then 4 of the box balls were already here, so I decided I would continue them leading down to look at the view. I like focal points in the garden because it gives you a reason for sitting in a particular place, and so all gardens should have focal points. Often I look at the background colour. You know, for instance, in the garden here you've got a brick wall, so I'm looking at the brick wall and thinking what colours would go well in front of that. The yew hedge was here, so we clipped it, and it seemed a perfect backdrop for the blue chair, because blue is actually a very good colour of paint, because there's quite a lot of green in blue. You know, my granddaughter's been coming here for years, and she spends a lot of time down here with me.
We loved what she did, and we knew that she was so talented and so amazing at what she'd created with the school. I always thought, oh, that would be an amazing industry to be in. Granny invited me to come and study on the course, and that's when I just fell in love with designing gardens, and it was kind of opening up of a whole new world. I'm definitely still always learning from Granny. She's always pointing things out in the garden, but also I'm at a point now in my career where I can start to show her the work that I've created, and we can discuss it together, and that's a really nice thing to be able to do.
It's amazing having somebody in my own family that we've got a lot in common with, and we spend quite a lot of time discussing things and what plants to use and so on. No, I'm very lucky with her. If you're going to design a garden for the first time, you first of all need to decide what soil type you've got. That's really necessary, whether it's acid or alkaline or neutral. So that will depend on what you grow. And then another thing is not to be over-ambitious, not to worry about having one of this and one of that and one of the next thing, but to keep repeating certain plants that will do well in the garden.
I am immensely proud of Granny. I think that she's informed a generation of gardeners, horticulturalists.
Often people come to me and they've no idea where to begin. What I like is building up their confidence and seeing them, you know, develop in their own right. It still is exciting.
It's always good to see a new generation coming in and learning from us oldies. I have to say my grandchildren are beginning to get interested in the garden, so whether they go on and become gardeners or garden designers, we'll see, but it'd be nice. This is very practical. I'm sowing peas. what I do is I make a very shallow sort of trench. You can barely call it a trench. It's more a groove in the ground. These are purple podded peas. So the peas themselves are green, but the pods are purple, really decorative. And when you cook them, if you cook them in the pod then turns green. Now I'm placing these about 2 or 3 inches apart. They don't need to be any wider than that. Personally, I think a double row works best. Okay. And just rake over them. Very simple. And just go along like this, and then gently, 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 like that, without disturbing the peas underneath. When those peas germinate, little green shoots should appear, marking the spot of each pea, depending on the weather, in about 2 or 3 weeks' time. But they will need support. Peas are scramblers, so the support needs to be able to take the tendrils whatever way they go. It does have to be something that is twiggy. So keep prunings, dogwood will do it, anything really. Anything that's twiggy and woody. And just stick them in at a slight angle, but you want them to be branching right from ground level, quite close together so they overlap, like that. There we go. What you're looking to achieve is a tangle, and this is a perfect tangle. And somehow doing this, just like putting up bean sticks, feels to me like part of the development of a vegetable plot that is really part of summer. If I see the pea sticks going in, then we've moved on. We've moved out of winter forever. And we're on into the middle of spring, and very quickly that will be followed by summer. Come on, the rhubarb season is in full flow. It's a fairly long season. It starts in February, particularly if you can force it. This is simply early, and that's a variety called Victoria, which is later. That's main season, if you like. Early is February, and then that will run through till June. Late doesn't really kick in until beginning of May. But May and June is fantastic. And all rhubarb should be left unpicked after the end of June. Leave it alone, because otherwise you'll weaken the roots and you won't get nearly such a good harvest next year, and gradually it will diminish. The reason why you force it is because the stems are sweeter. Now, if I take the lid off, you can see that there's a lot less foliage, and if I pull it up like that, you can see that it looks rather anemic. But of course, if you do this in February or early March, it's a treat. Now, whenever you're harvesting rhubarb, there is one really important thing to remember. Never cut it. You pull rhubarb. And if you cut it, you can get infection and rot in the stem. If you pull it, it comes away with a little piece of the base where it's attached to the root, and that heals very quickly. You need a little bit of this heel on the bottom of the stem. But you can see that's got a bit twisted, but it's paler than most rhubarb, and that will be sweeter. So I'll pop that in there. Now, obviously, these stems are unforced, so you can see they've got very green leaves, and the leaves are poisonous. You don't eat them, but it is absolutely delicious. And I love a rhubarb crumble, rhubarb pie. Just stewed rhubarb with yogurt for breakfast is a really good way to start the day. And of course, the leaves are brilliant on the compost heap. Once they're composted, then they'll do no harm whatsoever. Now, earlier this month, we went down to South Wales to join Sue Kent in her garden.
After a very wet winter here in Swansea, springtime in my garden is the time of year that brings me such joy and hope. Look at this. This is the first fruit tree blossom of the year, and it's damson plum. It hasn't got much of a scent, but it really lifts the spirits. Over here, I planted walnuts. Nothing seems to be happening yet, but come with me. This was a walnut that I put in a bag in the fridge to try and get it to germinate. Nothing happened for months, and I was about to put it in the compost bin yesterday, and I noticed a shoot, and I'm so pleased and so excited. But I should know better. I've been gardening for many years, and I shouldn't give up on plants until June to give them a chance to see if they'll shoot. So this one, with its lovely little shoot, is going to go in a pot and grow. I'm going to use a peat-free compost. It likes a nice light soil, and the way I do this is use a local product, which is crushed cockle shells. So I'm going to sprinkle them in, and they will be very slow release calcium as well as a sort of soil aerator. It'll slightly alkaline the soil, and walnuts prefer that anyway. I'm going to mix it in. So I've got my crock in, then put a base layer in the bottom of the pot. I'm going to very gently take my baby out. Ooh, so exciting. Look at that little shoot that's cracked open. And I'm going to pop that with the shoot going downwards, because that's the root. And then I'm going to cover it with a 2-inch layer of compost. So this walnut is from a tree that my father gave to me, from a tree that his father gave to him, and I am giving it to my son to grow in his garden. So it really is a family tree, and it's rather lovely to think it'll carry on through the generations. I'm going to top it off with some pistachio shells.
So I eat a lot of pistachio nuts, and I love the smell. Oh, gosh.
They will slowly break down and add nutrients and deter slugs.
And it makes a little mini mulch for a smaller pot to keep in the moisture and stop the weeds coming. Needs a bit of a water. And there we go. I'm so pleased with this. It's absolutely stunning, and it's lighting up the garden when not much else is here. It's Spirea bridal wreath, and you can see here some beautiful small white flowers already open, but lots more to come. And it's almost got red branches on it. It looks good in summer, and although it's deciduous, the branches look great in winter. I am a bit of a fan of Spirea, and here I've got them free-flowing, but around the garden I've used them more structurally and I've clipped them quite tightly. But this one is the star of the show at the moment.
It's a great time for me to plant anything tender. Being coastal, the sea air is warmer, keeping the frosts away. The key is to know your own climate and use protection like fleece if needed.
This is going to be a case of third time lucky. I've tried 3 times to grow this, and twice the plant's been got by frost, and this year I've kept it in the greenhouse and it's survived. It's Echium piñana, and it derives from the Canary Islands, and I think it's going to be absolutely extraordinary. This is going to grow huge, up to 4 meters, and it's going to be covered in blue flowers, which are really attractive to bees. And the flowers are going to produce lots of little seedlings, and hopefully they're going to populate all the way along here. I might have to dig some up and shelter them into the greenhouse for winter to ensure their survival, but I will leave some. It's supposed to be a biennial. That means you plant the seed one year, you get the flower the next year, but in this case, this is 3 years old, so for me it's a triennial. And the reason I put it here is because it likes a very sunny spot, and this is the sunniest spot in my garden. It likes free draining soil, and also it hides the ugly fence, and I can see it when I'm lying in my bath from my bathroom. And now all I've got to do is water.
A lot of my edible crops are winter hardy. They cope with low light and start to regrow as the days lengthen and warm.
I like to pick a salad every night, and I've already started here. I've got parsley, mint, lamb's lettuce, a bit of normal lettuce, some beetroot leaves, and I want some more. And it's amazing. This looks a bit of a mess, but it's full of food. And here I've got landcress, which is a bit like watercress, but it roots itself in soil, you can see. And I'll cut a bit, and it's got quite a peppery flavour, but it'll regrow before you know it. This is twisted leaf garlic, and the leaves have a very subtle, not overpowering flavour of garlic, so nice to add.
Twisted garlic is a perennial. That means it will keep coming back year after year, and that goes for sorrel too.
This is a stalwart of the salad. This is French sorrel, and it just keeps giving. When they're smaller, they're great for salads. When they're bigger, they're great for adding to curries. And when you see this appearing, you want to get rid of it because you don't want the plant to get to seed. So you remove that. They're also great in green smoothies.
The nasturtiums don't usually grow over winter. It's classed as an annual, so the fact that it has survived in the greenhouse is a stroke of luck.
I'm going to finish the bowl with primrose flowers, which are rather beautiful and delicate, and you can eat the flowers but not the leaves. And of course, if you've got any health conditions, it's best to check. So I've got vibrant green zesty flavours, I've got lemon flavours, I've got peppery flavours, and nothing gives me more pleasure than eating from my garden.
I love the fact that Sue is growing her walnut to make a tree to produce walnuts to give to her son, and that the walnut came from her father's tree, which came from a walnut from his father. That intergenerational handing on is something that taps into a longevity that we don't normally think of in our gardens. We want everything now. Right. These, as you can see, are lemons. I'm just taking the fruit off for two reasons. One, because if you leave mature fruit on the tree, that will inhibit the development of flowers and other fruits, even though they look lovely. And two, because these are particularly heavy and are weighing down. So for example, this is fine, it looks nice and it's not weighing the branch down. But where they are, like there, I'm just going to take that off and that will spring back up. This is not pruning. Pruning citrus is something you do when the worst of the weather is over, so I would leave that till May. But it's good to get them outside as soon as you can, because citrus don't like being indoors, particularly not in a centrally heated house. So that's fine there. I've got a lovely basket of fruit. I mean, you have to say, look at that. You know, there is something magical about having your own lemons or your own oranges from your garden. But now is a really good time to repot any citrus that you have to give it a fresh start to grow. And this one, for example, has been in this pot for quite a long time. I haven't got a new pot for it. So what I'm going to do is take it out of this pot, clean up the roots, get rid of the old compost, refresh the compost and put it back into the same pot. So the first thing I'm going to do is just take it out the pot. There we go. I'm going to put that onto there. You need plenty of crocks. The same crocks can go in the bottom. I'm just going to clean off some of the spent compost on here. Now, this has been in this pot for probably a couple of years. If you're keeping it in the same pot, you need to do this at least every other year. If you're potting onto a bigger pot, then you probably need to do that about every 3 years. But either way, just using your fingers, take any compost off that you can. Don't worry if you break the roots a little bit, because they will regrow. I'm getting my thumb in there and I'm just working free excess compost. Now, the compost mix. That is a bucket of sieved garden compost, horticultural grit, and actually I've got here a mix of potting compost with a lot of grit, leaf mould and sieved garden compost in it. But I'm going to add a bit more garden compost, not a lot, just a little bit in there. And quite a lot of grit. In fact, I'm going to add all this grit to this mix. And then mix it up. Right, so we'll put some in the bottom of the pot, like that. Okay, that's good. Now, holding it nice and upright, fill in around. And what I'm going to do is just shake it gently. Shake it in there, and then a little bit more on top of that. Leaving enough space on the surface for it to take water. I will then water that in, and that will drive the compost into those nooks and crannies of the roots. And once they come outside and start to show signs of growth, citrus should be watered and fed once a week. I feed them on a quite dilute seaweed mix, and so that we combine the watering and the feed at the same time. Now, it seems amazing to me, but RHS Chelsea Flower Show is just a few weeks away. It's racing up on us, and we went down to Cornwall to visit Andrew Mills as he prepared his exhibition for Chelsea, which incidentally is based upon a long and well-founded Cornish tradition.
For the last 20 years, I've been manager of Burrencoose Nurseries, and they're a big nursery with rare, unusual plants. They sell magnolias, rhododendrons, camellias predominantly. And so I've done many, many Chelseas before. But this will be the first time that actually my plants will be on display at Chelsea for the whole world to see. When I started out in horticulture, as did many other farmers locally, grew anemone decane and St. Piran, the local strain. Anemones originate from the eastern Mediterranean, so they like it warm. And Cornwall seldom gets a frost, so that's why people grew anemones. We had all these market gardeners and farmers growing small amounts of anemones, and the farmer's wife would pick them during the day, and they would bunch them up in the evenings, and then there would be a regular deposit to train stations where the boxes of these anemones would be taken to Covent Garden. So that was a very important industry for Cornwall many, many years ago. But that all petered out probably late 80s, early 90s. And this is just a nod back to that. So what I've got here is I've got 5 different types of anemone grant. I've got the Jerusalem type. What's common to the Jerusalem type is there'll be lots of reds. Well, these are suited for cut flowers because the breeding of them over the years have increased the stem length, they've increased the flower size, they've also increased disease resistance by the thickness of the leaves. Hardy outside, not just only grown in a glasshouse. Bred from that variety called Maron, and that's classified as a flower machine. What we have with the Maron is a very tall flower and quite a slender stem. Now we're here and amongst the Mistral varieties of the Italian ranunculus. These are my favourites, and they will give you a constant supply of anemones over a long period of time. So what you won't have is a flush and then gone. And they are very consistent in their quality, and they are very consistent in their stem length, and the colours are quite exceptional. My overall favourite would be Anemone coronaria Mistral Panda, and this is just coming into bloom. So look at this. You can see why it's called Panda. They've gone further with the Mistral variety to create the Mistral Plus, which means there's even bigger flower heads, even thicker stems, and the plant is a little bit more compact. They would be perfect to grow in your garden. The other variety I have is the Levante Double. Slightly shorter stem, which is common, but also a very, very delicate flower when you get up close. These anemones are historically planted in July in Cornwall, both inside and outside. That will establish the plant before it flowers, and the flowers will start flowering in October, November and December. There'll be a short pause in December and January when the light levels drop and the weather gets poor, only for them to restart again towards the end of January, February, and go through into March when other flowers come onto the market and the anemones have had their day. They will come back in next year in a bigger corm, but they won't be as good as the first year because the best anemone flower will come from the smallest size corm. I usually pick 2 or 3 times a week, and I get to about 50 or 60 bunches. Any more and I just won't be able to cope with it. To pick an anemone, you need to pick them when the flower is still tight and not open. So you could pick this, bunch it up, and in 2 or 3 days that will be open, and it will stay open for another 2 or 3 days, maybe 4 or 5 in a cool kitchen window. When picking anemones, it's very important to get the stem length as long as possible and try to cut it off as close as you can to the corm to stop any rot being left on the remaining stem that you've picked from. And like every cut flower, cut it off diagonally so that you have a bigger surface area of the stem bottom to take up as much water as possible. So when it comes to Chelsea, I'm trying to just slowly keep these going along until probably 2 weeks before the show, where then I can sort of accelerate their blooming by just adding some basic tomato feed. So the weather's going to be dull for the next couple of weeks, and that will really help me slow these down a little bit and not bring them on too fast. What I intend to display at Chelsea is anemones in this stage of opening. So hopefully on the flower stand at Chelsea you'll see just a riot of colour, and as long as I'm pleased with how it looks, the medal is a bonus.
Nervous at all or not?
No, I don't do nerves. Apart from the day. They're grown locally, the dung come locally, they're distributed locally, they're bought locally in a 2-mile radius. And it's quite remarkable to see something which is smaller than a piece of gravel to produce something which is quite comprehensive and can produce multiple flowers. Anybody can do it. It's a garden plant as well as a cut flower.
I thought it was absolutely fascinating that Andrew said the smallest corm produced the biggest flower. Now that is really counterintuitive. And also I'm only just beginning to really learn about the ranunculus family, and with anemones of all kinds. We're very used to Japanese anemones and maybe sort of woodland anemones, but of course you realise there are so many more. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing how he fares at Chelsea. See them at their very best. Talking about their very best, I do think the orchard is looking really good at the moment. And I don't take much credit for that, because what we started to do a few years ago was take all last year's tulips that were grown in pots, and we let them die back and they dried out, and then take the bulbs and planted them in the orchard and in the cricket pitch at random. And some come up, some flower well, some don't flower, and it's pure luck. Well, A, I think it looks great, and B, it makes me very happy. These are Gardener's Delight tomatoes, destined to be planted outside in the vegetable garden. I've got other tomatoes I'll grow in the greenhouse, but these will do perfectly well outside, but I need to get the timing right. Here at Longmeadow, it's really not feasible to plant tomatoes out much before June, and sometimes not till the middle of June. So I've got at least 6 weeks and maybe a couple of months to go. And the pots that they're in are not going to be big enough to provide the nourishment or the moisture they need, because before they plant out, the plants could be 3 times as big. So they need potting on. Now, if I take this out of the pot, and I'm just going to put that in there, right, you will see there's more root than compost. This is exactly the right moment to pot it on. Now, having established that you do need to pot it on, then the question is what size pot? If I was to plant this in a pot, not out in the garden, and there's no reason why you can't grow tomatoes in a pot, that's roughly the sort of size that would do. Doesn't want to be much smaller than that, but it doesn't need to be much bigger. And you might think, well, the logic is put it onto that, and that's job done. The whole thing's finished. But it's not a good idea for 2 reasons. One, it means that you've got to store much bigger pots under cover, and that's going to use up a lot more space for another month at least. And 2, it won't be good for the plant, because the plant's roots grow outwards like the spokes of a wheel, so that most of the compost in the pot is acting as a sponge to hold moisture. So it's going to be too wet. That's about right. You can see the difference. It's distinctly bigger, but not a lot bigger. And if you place it inside, you know, it's probably got 1/4 inch all round it. And as a rule of thumb, it definitely doesn't want more than 1 inch space around the edge of the old pot. Now, here's a trick, and it always works. Take your new pot, put compost, and by the way, you need a really good compost, so peat-free, add some goodness to it if you can. A bit of grit, and if you've got sieve garden compost, the plant will do better. Put soil in the bottom, like that. Place the plant in, maybe take a little bit more soil out, make enough room. Place that in its pot, don't take it out the pot, and then, and I'm going to do this on the table to show you, it'll be messy, fill in around it. This might seem a bit bonkers, but just bear with me. It works. And we will push that down there. And having done that, gently lift out the inner pot. And what you're left with is a space that is exactly the size of the old pot. Now you remove it and just pop it in. That's it. That's all you have to do. And the beauty of this system is that the plant barely knows it's been potted on. There's no stress whatsoever on the roots. Don't try and force the soil around it, just water it, and then that will give it enough goodness and enough moisture to see it through at least another month, by which time the plant will be that big, and we can consider either planting it out or potting it on to its final home. Right. Well, that's certainly one job you can do this weekend, but here are some more. As the spring bulbs end their flowering season, they need to be left so that the foliage can slowly die back. But if they are in a handsome pot, that means the pot can't be used for months on end. So I lift them out of the good pot, put them into an upcycled plastic pot where they can be set to one side, and it frees up a really nice container for summer display. Courgettes are the hardiest of the cucurbit family, and you can start to sow them now. There are lots of varieties to choose from, but whichever ones they are, you grow them in the same way. Either place individual seeds in generous-sized plugs, or a couple of seeds to a pot. Cover them over, and then place them in water for about 15 to 20 minutes so that they soak up moisture. They must go somewhere warm in which to germinate, and they should appear in between 10 and 20 days. Next year's daffodils will be formed in the bulbs, but if you allow the seed heads to develop, that will weaken the flowering next year. So snap off spent flowering heads just below the seed heads, leaving the stem, and let the leaves die back naturally to feed into the bulb for next year. I've got one more job to do here in the jewel garden. The jewel garden, by the way, is the last bit of Longmeadow to get going. Yes, we have the tulips and the wallflowers and pots, but actually in the borders, there's very little happening yet because it's dominated by the foliage of an allium purple sensation, which will flower in a couple of weeks' time. But there is one job I can do, which means getting into the borders, and if I do it now, it's going to make a dramatic difference later in the year. Right in the middle of the border here is this tree. This is a Paulonia, sometimes known as the foxglove tree, and it does have wonderful flowers, sort of lavender-coloured mauve flowers, which will grow on really quite a large tree. This will grow, if I left it, 50 foot tall, a really big, proper tree. But I didn't plant it to become a big tree. I planted it in order that I could really relish its foliage. And Paulonia is one of the trees that if you coppice it, i.e. prune it back really hard, it will sprout new growth, which in turn will carry extra big foliage, and they look really exotic and dramatic, and they're brilliant for setting off flowers around it in a border. Now's a good time to do it, just as it's starting to break into leaf. So here we go. I'm going to chop those out. Now, if I left this like this, it would effectively be a pollard. Pollards are when you leave a straight bare stem, and then the new growth will grow from here, and it will stand out, but I think that would look a bit odd. What I want to do is take it down so that the new growth comes from about this height here. So, I think about that height is right. Well, I don't do that very often. It looks drastic, it'll be fine. And we'll get new shoots coming in just a few weeks' time. They'll start to grow. By midsummer, they should be 1 metre long, and these huge leaves will appear. They'll be at their best in August, September, and into October. And I can either repeat that next year or just do it every few years. But it's a really good way of adding drama to a border. And that's the end of the drama for today, I'm afraid. But I'll see you back here at Longmeadow next time. So until then, bye-bye.